My name's Fabian Rivers. I'm an exotics and mainly exotics vet, but I do small animals as well in South Birmingham. Some people know me online as Dready Vet, and I've done a couple of interesting things coming into veterinary medicine. I've been graduating for 3 years, so I graduated in 2018. And since then, it's just been a labor of love to try and share my experiences in a variety of different planes, and you know situations and opportunities like this are great. So I'm really happy to be here with you, Bolu.
Yeah, and I guess like my counterpart here, I'm Dr. Bolu Eso. I am currently a small animal veterinary general practitioner, I'd say. I'm not necessarily specializing. A general practitioner. I work in London. I've been graduated since 2019, although it feels like 10 years. It's crazy. It feels like ages. I've been graduated since 2019. I graduated in February, and I studied in Budapest in Hungary, and I've come over to the UK to work. And similar to Fabian, I've done a lot of opportunities, let's say extracurricular opportunities within the veterinary space, kind of sharing what it is I do, how I got here, the challenges I've had to overcome, and also sharing, tips with people and things like that. So yeah, it's great to be a part of the discussion and here with you today, Fab.
Absolutely, it's an honor. It's only an honor to be here. So, I mean, one thing you mentioned is that you obviously studied in Budapest. I didn't actually mention that I studied in the Czech Republic in Brno, which is the second city of the Czech Republic, and I'm guessing you were there for 5.5 years. And
yeah, 5.5 years.
I was there for 6 years. And so, the journey was a quite long one and convoluted one. But I mean, just speaking from myself, it always starts in the same place, really. I mean, for me, I always wanted to be around animals at a very young age. My earliest memories were enjoying being around cats and dogs and all sorts of creepy crawlies in the back garden, stick insects, worms, ants. I was just fascinated with biology. I was fascinated with the real world. I was fascinated with David Attenborough. It was a huge amount was a fascination with the natural world, and I was very fortunate enough to grow with that and be interested in the science and the healing of animals, even though I didn't really understand what that entailed. And I grew with that, and that was a real privilege to be in a situation and have a desire at a young age to want to do that. But that's kind of my start point, really. How about you?
And where would you, before I even go into myself, where would you even say your desire came from? Because I think I'm exactly the same. I think a lot of us are quite similar in the veterinary field. We all just kind of really gravitate to animals. I have no clue where I wanted to get this love for animals. I just remember, for as long as I can remember, just being able to sit down and watch an animal and just be fascinated with the dynamics, adaptations, reading about them, learning about them, going to the library, picking up encyclopedias, watching David Attenborough, watching nature documentaries. But the thing is that there's nobody in my family that has an animal background. For me, there's no, my mum does law, my dad does estate management and things like that, and IT and databases and things. And nobody even does. I think I've got a few medics, but in distant family, nobody. So I don't know where I even got it from, to be honest. I remember just kind of formulating this. I like animals. I like helping people. Oh, that means vet, and then going from there. Where did you pick up the fascination from?
There was no obvious start point. Exactly the same. My brother is, I wouldn't say animal averse, but as close as I can get to animal averse without actually saying animal averse. It's not his cup of tea at all. He's never been that way inclined. And it's really hard to say. I think the only person in my family on my dad's side was basically my grandma on my dad's side. And she was very much an animal person. So she always had cats. And, she lived, when she grew up, she lived around lots of animals, and she was fortunate enough to have a period of living in India. And so her experience was kind of proximity to some of the weird and wonderful things. So, but she was very young when she had that experience. And then she came back to the UK. and, you know, always just liked being around animals, dogs, cats, everything. But even then, she was the only person in the, I would say, immediate or extended family who had any type of affiliation with animals. And it's just, I think what makes veterinary medicine such an amazing career is that when you're connected to it, you can't explain it. You just have there is a natural affinity to wanting to be around animals and wanting to do right by them. And, you know, that's what resonates with me. And I think it's interesting because even though most of my extended family didn't really get it, you know, especially like my uncles and aunties, they just didn't really have an understanding, and they kind of always questioned why I wouldn't want to do something else. But the one thing that they've said now in particular is that I was so driven to do it that even at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, I would always say, well, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be working with animals. And you know, it's interesting about how passionate you can be at such a young age about something like that without understanding what it means.
And I think that's where we draw so many parallels, because I was just stubborn. Like I was like, you know that the saying, a dog with a bone, like it was really like, I just, yeah, I'm going to be a vet no matter what. That's it. And that was like my thing. I used to tell everybody I knew, like, you know, my family, friends, like my closest friends, all my little best friends in primary school, like, well, Bolu's going to be a vet. Like nobody knows what they're going to be when they're older, but Bolu's going to be a vet. And, you know, everybody else around me knew, like, and it's the aunties and uncles thing as well. Like a lot of my aunties and uncles used to hear me say, you know, you want to be a vet. And I'd say, I want to be a vet, but I want to work with like lions and tigers and bears and all these sorts of crazy stuff. And they used to look at me like, you know, human medicine is just as good. like, you know, why the animals? And, you know, I don't know, like, because I guess some people in my family have like a unexplained fear of animals. And then some people just, they're neither here or there. They have no real opinion on it. Whereas I was just on the other end of the spectrum where I was just like, oh, these are amazing. I love them. I'm going to, like, you know, gravitate towards them. And so I kind of pushed in that direction. And even like we speak about having that passion and drive, I know from a young age, like around about 8 or 9, I was really kind of looking at what universities to get into. And that's how I kind of was set on the path, okay? Because I think in medicine, we tend to have that kind of perspective of thinking 10 years in advance. And almost when you I don't even know how you think about this when you're 8 years old. And it still kind of baffles me when I talk back about it. But thinking about, okay, I remember seeing the University of Liverpool, and looking at the University of Liverpool is like, that's that was the top of my list, because it had the best breakdown of what experience you needed in order to get into the university. And I remember back then, I think it was something like 10 weeks or something like that. And it was amongst mixed, like practice. So you have like small animal, large animal, farms, shelters, whatever you might do and all that sort of stuff. So I remember kind of looking at that at a young age and thinking, okay, well, this looks like a lifelong goal. This is how we're going to get here. Like, you know, kind of set the goal, set the plan, and try and knock down the hurdles as you go, obviously with like stuff like 11 plus and that in the way, which seems like a millennia ago. But yeah, like, and then just trying to accomplish that hurdles. And what was it like for you going through secondary school with the same kind of drive? Did you ever waver, or?
I mean, the short answer is no. And the long answer is, the only time I ever really I never questioned my commitment to veterinary medicine before I really, again, knew what it was and what it meant. I never really questioned my commitment to animals at any point. And, you know, the bit you mentioned about the fact that Bolu's going to be a vet, you know, even in primary school, it was the same for me. It was, people would just say, well, you're going to be a vet. I wish I had the same drive and I wish I had that same direction. No one ever saw me as anything else as a vet. You know, that was what I was going to do and I was committed to it. But I think the only times I ever really considered was, I guess it kind of comes onto the topic about why we're having this conversation, is really more about how I would be as an individual within the area, within the community. And I think a lot of that was driven by the fact that I had some dotted experiences doing a variety of different work experiences. And, you know, it was difficult because, you know, part of your identity as a human being is for me at least, growing up was very much, I'm an individual and I bring my passion and my desire, my commitment to this field. And, you know, it was I understood the mechanics of it, but I don't think you really get a real understanding of what emotionally it can feel like to have what feels like hurdles because of your identity as a person. And so when, you know, I did have those moments where people would say, you know, maybe, you know, you're going to find it difficult to exist in this community, or you're going to, you know, maybe this type of work isn't for you. And maybe you'd be better suited elsewhere. And, you know, from a variety of different people in my life, whether it was academic or whether it was people who were, you know, friends at the time. And there was a lot of I don't know, muted belief in some sense. And none of it was related to my academic ability. It was all very much due to my identity as someone who was a black person, or someone who at the time who had a CAMRO, or you know, a lot of it was about those kind of finer details. But the one thing that was motivating more than anything was, apart from my own desire to be within this field, was my mom basically and my brother, and both of them just never ever, they said, if you want something, you can go and get this. And they said even though your journey up until the point of being in veterinary medicine probably won't be conventional, because you've never done anything conventional in your life ever anyway, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least have a belief and opportunity that you can work with animals. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't be a vet, because you have all the skill set, you have the desire, you have the passion, you have the commitment. And you know, I was very lucky in that sense to have an immediate family and an extended family who were, you know, by the time I was in, you know, GCSE time, which again feels like absolutely donkeys away. You know, they were very much behind me, because when someone has been passionate about a single career for 10 years and they're only 16, it says something about the type of direction that they want to go in. So I was fortunate in that sense. But, you know, I did have my wobbles, but the one thing that I never ever questioned was the fact that I was going to work with animals, and that, you know, in whatever capacity that looks like for me was a good one.
Yeah, and just like, I'm just going to like kind of segue off of your points and mention the fact that, like you mentioned about your mum and your brother, they were the ones who were kind of like, you know, they essentially championed you. They're your enablers. Like, and I think everybody has different household structures and nuclear family structures. I think I was quite lucky in the fact that both my parents, they've always said to both me and my brother, no matter what, like, you know, whatever you want to do, we're supporting you full-heartedly, as long as you're going into a profession that you love doing, and you know, you really enjoy doing it. Don't worry about the money, because money can always come later. But if you're passionate about something, you can always grow and grow a lifelong career in it. And that's what my parents, they kind of drummed that into my head, which is like, I'm from a Nigerian background, so it's like, I think a lot of Nigerians are very academic, like very academic driven, and very like, you know, it's almost overachieving, of like, you know, point to prove kind of overachievingness. So you get a lot of Nigerians where sometimes in some cases, when you're chasing such dreams, especially when it's like completely off tangent, it's kind of like Nigerians look at it a bit like, oh, what's going on, you know? And so a lot of Nigerians have that kind of culture, can sometimes be stifling in that sense and hold you back. And a lot of the culture is, you know, the lawyers, the engineers, the doctors, because these are all status symbols, like, you know, and obviously the roots of that comes a lot deeper, but we don't necessarily have to go that far. But yeah, and so to go off that side, but to have parents at the same time that are like to me, you know what, we understand that you want to do this, and you want to do this for lifelong. It's not just a fleeting like obsession. It's you're really in it. We will support you, and we'll support you no matter how. And that came in so many different forms, whether it was supporting me through work experience and helping me drop me off at, like, you know, like animal sanctuaries, or you know, give me a little bit of a top up on my pocket money so I could go like all the way out to the middle of nowhere to, like, you know, whether it was stay on a farm somewhere, or go catch several buses to get to some campus, like, you know, to go and see stuff. They're always there, even when it came to like universities and you know, viewing universities. And obviously at the time of applying to university, there was only 5, I think, or 7, 5, I think it's 7 now. Yeah, and there was only a few of them at the time, and one of them was in Edinburgh and one of them was in Glasgow. I remember my parents were like, "Oh, we have to go and try and take a look at Edinburgh. Let's go and take a look." And we went to Edinburgh for a day, and that was like, and like it's just those small little things that contributed to help growing the passion even more. And like, okay, I'm definitely gonna do this. I'm gonna double down on it just to make them proud, because they see how much it makes me happy. They've double clicked on it and invested in me, and now let's keep going. And so that's what kind of drove me in that direction, I'd say. And like, in the vein of mentorship, I'd say that my parents were my earliest mentors, because I didn't have somebody who had exactly been in what I'd want to do, or done exactly what I'd do, or looked exactly like me, and gone through the steps. So my parents were just my biggest mentors in the sense of they taught me about my life skills, but then they also enabled me to kind of go through this journey, like, trusting that every step I take is an intentional one, but who knows where it will land me, So I'd say they're definitely like my earliest mentors. And like, I was gonna mention something that you mentioned earlier about your work experience, because it like kind of triggered a memory for me of like one of my early work experiences working in the vet practice, and where the kind of resistance came from in the journey to becoming a vet. And I'd say I was a happy-go-lucky kid. I think I'm still happy-go-lucky. I think I'm pretty like, la 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 la, everything is great. Like, I still like rose-tinted glasses. But like, I didn't necessarily always see obstacles. But then when I think back at it, I think, okay, because I remember being at a veterinary practice, and I remember one vet telling me, "You don't want to do this job." And you hear that sometimes. You hear that from senior vets. And it wasn't on a race. It wasn't on a race thing. I don't think it was related to my race at all. I think that's some of the things that we can talk about in the profession in terms of mental health and lots of stuff. But I remember her looking at me in the face, and I was there like, I can't remember. I wore like a tie with a polo shirt. It was so. But and I remember her telling me that you don't want to do this job. You don't want to go down this route. I think she just seemed a little bit exhausted, and I think that day was particularly rough as well. But yeah, I remember her telling me you don't want to do it. And that was one of the first times I was questioning, like, what does she mean by that? And she's like, you work a lot of long hours and this, that, you don't. And I think a lot of people hear that along the way, especially when you're doing experience. And I was going to ask you, like, when you say you had the naysayers and you said it was an academic vein, was it ever like overtly just you're not going to fit in, or it was straight up like you're just not going to fit in?
I had some of it was more about where I sat myself within the culture of veterinary medicine. And what I mean by that is that it wasn't like necessarily, and this is the beauty of being British to a certain extent, the kind of covert ways we infer things because we're not, direct enough to say things. And but what I would say is that there was two sides to it. It was the suggestion and the inference that there were parts of my identity that might find it difficult, without directly or telling me you will not fit in because you are X, Y, and Z. It
was always
of course. Yeah. It was kind of pushed to the side or suggested and then I had the other moments where I would do some work experience for et cetera, and I would see as a disparity about the way that I was being treated. And for example, if I would go away and do certain things in certain parts of the country, not how I was treated at the experience, but how I was treated just outside of that particular experience. So for example, if I was going to the shops in a rural area, for example, I had a couple of odd moments, and I think the difficulty is that these are the things that you don't notice or expect, because when we're both people I'm from Birmingham, you're from London, and both those places are exceptionally multicultural, and we live we have access to a variety of different cultures by virtue of being in cities. And that access means that our understanding to a certain extent of the wider parts of the world around us can sometimes be a little bit sheltered. And so, but veterinary medicine, because of the variety that it does provide us, you know, it gives you so much experience and worldly experience to actually understand the world around us. And so, you know, those were the moments where I thought to myself, you know, I have to think very diligently and carefully about my position and how I go forward. I mean, fortunate for me, I always want to do exotics, you know, and that, you know, small animals is an area that I have a keen interest in, that I'm keen to not, you know, neglect in that sense. But, you know, I mean, fast forwarding it a little bit, I studying abroad. I mean, we'll probably skim over that a little bit, yeah. But I mean, that was an experience as well. But I think, you know, from just to kind of touch it very quickly, my experience of being in the Czech Republic and going the unconventional route, it was driven by the fact that by the time I got to university level, I really wanted to have another opportunity to do something completely different, because then I'd realized, you know, actually I'd had opportunities to study in the UK, but by the time I wanted to be in Europe, and I was tired of kind of what felt like the mill of the same things and going over and you know, once I realized I could come back to the UK and I was going to be an hour and a half away from Vienna and, you know, have all these opportunities in Central Europe, it was quite a clear choice for me. And the whole dynamics around culture and race in the Czech Republic is a little bit different. It's a lot more overt. It's a lot more direct. And weirdly enough, I really prefer that way of, if someone has an issue with me or my identity, I don't have to think about it. I know I just don't operate in the same spaces as them. And, you know, being in the UK, it was a different experience, you know, but, you know, it's, and I appreciated that. It's a weird thing to have to accept, but I appreciated that kind of direct nature of it. And as a result, I had a really positive time in the Czech Republic.
And that's something very, like, you're touching on so many different things that I'd like want to accept from, but it's like, that's something that's very quintessentially British, is the way that we micromanage each other and we micro deal with each other. It's all hints and suggestions. If you're not getting the message, you're perceived either like inept or ignorant, like, you know. But, you know, people are hinting at you in that direction. It's those sorts of things that you have to kind of find a way of balancing. And yeah, like being hungry, it's very straight up. It's either I don't know who you are, or I have a problem with you, or I don't. And people are either too. Whereas in the UK, it's almost like it's so undercover that you can't necessarily directly be called out for it. And I guess that's what we have a lot of problem with. And I mean, it's been raised as well, like how even you look at how just in general, how like history and culture is taught in the UK, we glide over a lot of different things. And so it's so easy to see how we don't quite get to the crux of what we're trying to say, and, you know, and that kind of pushing people to the side happens quite a bit, especially like for people like us in our career. But yeah, going through the hungry period for me was a very amazing period of time, because it was learning how to navigate myself in a different country, but also navigate in a place where I didn't necessarily felt I belonged, especially after being in England for so long. I think it's crazy how we think of England being the be-all and end-all. Like the image of being a vet for me wasn't necessarily that much of a wide scope. I didn't really even think about that they have vets in other countries. I didn't even think about so many other countries where they have vets. And so to go and study abroad and then be able to come back home was such a welcome path for me, and like a welcomed avenue. And so I really enjoyed that kind of process. And it was nicer being able to have that experience and know that, okay, I'm in another country and I can learn more, I can see more, do more, and experience everything differently.
It's really nice, because we didn't really know each other in any particular context until we've come back to the UK, and ironically our journeys literally ran in parallel. And it's interesting about how much of a journey can have so many parallels. And I guess ironically, it's nice to come back and, having gone through that process, to say, actually, this is a process or a direction or a journey, probably is the best word, that we thought we were doing by ourselves, and ironically we weren't. And also beyond that, it's galvanized us and put us in a position to want to do and be visible the way we are now. And I guess, you know, it's really, really nice to have that opportunity. I guess let's just fast forward it a little bit, because we could talk all day. I guess one question, yeah, I mean, one question would be, you know, how, given that we're all very successful people now, how do your wider family and your, you know, close friends, the people who supported you, how do they feel about where you are now compared to where it all started?
Yeah, it's funny. I have so many catch up with so many of my friends, and they're always like, Bolu, it's so great to, like, you know, when you have real good people in your life, and you're like, a lot of my friends are the ones who tell me, the ones who I grew up with, especially, they're like, it's so nice to see you doing what you're doing, especially being able to get onto like TV and do those sorts of things, like, you know, like how you're doing as well. And just to, the fact that I said it from such a young age and actually now I'm here, it's like, you know, everybody's so happy for me. I get a lot of that, you know, that welcomeness from my friends, and that they're kind of proud of me, and you feel that kind of pride. And it's the same with my parents, that they're always still championing me no matter what I want to do going forward. And even like on a bigger scale, looking at from when I was younger, this is kind of the position that I want to be in. This is it. This is like, you know, I want to be doing the things I'm doing on a daily basis. So yeah, I think everybody's quite quite chuffed the fact that I've made it, and relieved, I think. What about you?
Same. I set the sight at being a vet, and I said to myself, possibly work with exotics and possibly have the opportunity to do some TV work. And it's, you know, 3 and a bit years in as a graduated vet, and I've done it really. And so it's, everyone is really overjoyed and super happy, because it really says that the thing that I wanted to do at 4 years old has come full circle. And I guess in a weird way, just we put in the work, but it's a privilege to be able to kind of seek the results, seek the rewards of our you know, our efforts that we sowed all those years back. So over the moon, really. And it just means that everything's a bonus from that one, because, you know, we've done it. So
it's come full circle.
It has. I mean, I think that really is a nice way to round everything off. But as always, it's great talking to you, dude. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, it's been fab. Pardon the pun.
See you later, dude.
See you later, mate.